This Day in Sports History. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little bit more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. You can find more information and more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's December 30th, and on this day in 1907, Abner Doubleday became the inventor of baseball. One of my vivid memories of childhood was a trip I made with my family to Fort Sumter in South Carolina. I think I was 10 or 11 at the time, and at the beginning of the guided tour, the lady leading the tour of about 30 was talking about the first shot fired in the Civil War, and she asked a question. Does anybody know who invented baseball? Well, none of the adults shouted out an answer, so I said, Abner Doubleday. And she said, that's right. And Abner Doubleday fired the first shot at Fort Sumter. I was pretty proud of myself. It wasn't until many, many years later that I learned only one of those things was actually true. So this is one of the great lies thrust upon us, right? The idea that Abner Doubleday invented baseball is the sports equivalent of George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. And this all came about because Albert Spalding, the sporting goods guy, wanted baseball to be an American invention. He was not a fan of Brit Henry Chadwick's claim that American baseball developed out of the English game of rounders. So, Spalding created a commission to look into the true origin of baseball. Abraham A.G. Mills was put in charge of the commission. Now, if that name seems the least bit familiar, then pat yourself on the back for being a great listener to this podcast, because I mentioned him during the Christmas Day edition of This Dish as the over-embellisher of the 1862 baseball game and crowd size on Hilton Head Island. He had a reputation for enhancing the truth or just saying whatever he thought people wanted to hear, and had no relation to the truth. So, how did this idea get started then? Well, it goes back to a letter from Abner Graves to James Sullivan. Now, Graves claimed to have knowledge of Doubleday as a student at Green's Select School in Cooperstown, New York, and organized the first baseball game along the shores of Lake Oswego in 1839. So Doubleday apparently improved on town ball, an accepted forerunner of baseball, by limiting the number of players and normalizing the number of bases to just 4, and then giving it the name baseball. Mr. Mills, our serial embellisher, added to the account, without any proof, that Doubleday also outlawed the practice of soaking, or throwing the ball at a runner between bases to get them out. Now, there was more to the report, and it was all released on this day in 1907. Now, of course, the guy who commissioned this report, Albert Spalding, was very excited. This substantiated everything that he believed in, and he ran with it. And this resulted in the plan to build the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown in 1937 to celebrate the centennial of baseball. At that point, a man by the name of Bruce Cartwright said, whoa here. My grandfather, Alexander Cartwright, invented baseball in 1845, and I've got the diary entries to prove it. The problem with the Doubleday myth is that there is not any evidence that he ever set foot in Cooperstown, and none of his writings ever mention baseball or a game resembling baseball. Add to that, Abner Doubleday is not in the Hall of Fame. And Cartwright is. The fact that the Doubleday myth continues to hang around can be attributed to what the Mills Commission released on this day back in 1907. On this day in 1988, Oklahoma State running back Barry Sanders had a game to remember, capping the best season a college running back ever had. Sanders and the 12th-ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys were playing the number 15 Wyoming Cowboys in the SeaWorld Holiday Bowl at Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego. And in what was supposed to be a shootout, it seemed like only one gun was firing. Sanders had been named as the Heisman Trophy winner earlier in the month, and he showcased why on the opening drive, sprinting untouched for a 33-yard touchdown.
On third down this year. This is one of the reasons why he's gone for a touchdown. Barry Sanders, 33 yards.
And that was only the beginning. He scored his second of the day in the second quarter and added his third in the third quarter.
Oklahoma State has had two quick scoring drives lately. Let's see how they answer. How about Barry Sanders to midfield? He might go! 67 yards.
He would also show off his passing skills on a trick play throwback to quarterback Mike Gundy to set up his fourth touchdown of the day. And then with time winding down in the third quarter, he scored his fifth and final touchdown of the day.
Second and 3, first down, touchdown!
His 5 touchdowns were a nice accompaniment to his 222 yards rushing, and he did it all in 3 quarters. He sat out the fourth and then was named the Holiday Bowl MVP as Oklahoma State routed Wyoming 62-14. Obviously, winning the Heisman means that Sanders was the best player in college football that season, but the season he had was the best of all time. Now, not counting his bowl game stats, Sanders rushed for 2,628 yards, had 3,249 all-purpose yards, which includes rushing, receiving, kickoff return, and punt return yardage, and he scored 39 touchdowns. He set 34 NCAA records that season, and it all ended on a very high note on this day, 36 years ago. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Do you remember Scott Skiles? He wasn't the flashiest of point guards. He may have played for the Magic, but his play was not overly reminiscent of Magic Johnson. But he could dish the rock, and on this day in 1990, Skiles dished it a lot. The Magic were playing the Denver Nuggets, and this game was not close after the ball went into the air. Skiles was finding open guys, and those open guys were knocking down shots. By the fourth quarter, Skiles was tracking towards the NBA assists record for a game of 29 set by Kevin Porter back in 1978. With more than 6 minutes left, he had already tied the record, but there was a tiny problem. The Magic were up double digits in the game, and so some bench players were on the floor. Well, Jerry Reynolds had apparently not been paying much attention to Skiles' efforts, because every time that Skiles fed Reynolds expecting him to shoot, he put the ball on the floor and he drove to the bucket or he passed it away, ruining the record-breaking assist. Well, finally, with 20 seconds left in the game, Reynolds got the message. Shoot the ball!
Here comes Skiles front court. Skiles to Reynolds. Jump shot is up. It is good! Gary Reynolds! Scott Skiles with his 30th assist for the night. And that's the new NBA record. And a standing ovation for the Magic point guard, 30 assists in this basketball game.
Skiles' 30 assists is still the NBA record. On this day in 2020, Becky Hammon became the first woman to take over as acting head coach in an NBA game. The Spurs were playing at home against the Lakers. In the second quarter, Greg Popovich thought DeMar DeRozan was fouled driving for a layup. But no whistle blew, and he came off the bench to argue, and in the process, received 2 quick technicals, and he was ejected. As he was walking to the locker room, he handed the reins of the team for the rest of the way to Hammon. Hammon was in her 7th season as a Spurs assistant at this point, after playing 16 years in the WNBA. Now, there are some who may point to an ejection of Pop in November 2019 as the first time Hammon took over in a game, but in that instance, it was a coach by committee, with assistant Tim Duncan and Hammon splitting duties. Well, on this day, Hammon was in complete control. Hammon is also the only woman to be a finalist for an NBA job when she was shortlisted for the Portland Trail Blazers job in 2021 that went to Chauncey Billups instead. Hammon is now the head coach of the Las Vegas Aces in the WNBA and led them to the title in 2022. On this day in 1978, the National Hockey League agreed to absorb 4 teams from the World Hockey Association. Instead of a merger, the NHL treated the teams from the WHA as expansion teams, and as such, the teams had to pay a $6 million entry fee. The 4 franchises allowed to join the NHL were the Edmonton Oilers, the Hartford Whalers, the Quebec Nordiques, and the Winnipeg Jets. Now, one concession that the joining teams got in the deal was the ability to protect 2 skaters and 2 goalies on their roster. That was especially important to the Oilers, who had recently acquired Wayne Gretzky from the Indianapolis Racers. One of the teams left out of the expansion, though, for no good reason, was the Houston Aeros. They were one of the most successful WHA franchises, winning 4 consecutive Western Division titles, and they won 2 of the 7 Avco Cups and played for another one. The Aeros were the only team to win an Avco Cup not admitted to the NHL. And since we mentioned Gretzky, on this day in 1981, Wayne Gretzky scored 5 goals in a 7-5 win over Philadelphia to give him 50 goals in 39 games, the fastest to 50 in a season ever. And in an only in Australia moment, on this day 1 year ago, a first-round qualifying match in the Brisbane Open between former U.S. Open champ Dominic Thiem and James McCabe had to be paused due to a snake invading the court. And of course, in Australia, where it seems that everything can kill you, it wasn't just a run-of-the-mill snake, it was an eastern brown, which is second on the list of venomous snakes in the world. The match was paused for about 40 minutes while a couple of snake wranglers were brought in to remove the 2-foot snake. After the match was resumed, Thiem won in 3 sets. And happy 49th birthday to Eldrick Tiger Woods. The owner of 15 major championships was born in Cypress, California on this day in 1975. Time now for today's Nothing to Do with Sports Fun Fact. When Eliza Doolittle sang in the movie My Fair Lady, it wasn't actually Audrey Hepburn singing. Instead, the songs were overdubbed by Marnie Nixon, who also overdubbed songs in West Side Story and The King and I. Hey, this is Steve White, the host of This Day in Sports History. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the episode or you're a fan of the podcast, can I ask you to do me a favor? I made the shortlist for the Best Sports Talk Podcast in 2024. There are some well-known folks in this category, such as the Kelsey brothers, Scott Van Pelt, Bill Roden, and I can use all the help that I can get. I put a link in the show notes that will take you to the page, and if you have a moment, click that link and cast your vote for my podcast. I would certainly appreciate it. Thanks to all of those who have voted, and again, thanks for listening. Have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.